Welcome to Resolving Type 2 Diabetes, The Simple Truth. My name is Dr. Mark Van Hoekstraat from Lifetime Wellness Family Chiropractic and Nutrition Center here in Oxford, Michigan. And today I'm going to share several facts about type 2 diabetes that may challenge your current beliefs about this terrible disease. The reason I'm doing this is because type 2 diabetes, in my opinion, is one of the most mismanaged conditions people suffer with. And if you are following the current standard medical care for type 2 diabetes, you are virtually guaranteeing its progression. It will only get worse. So I'm going to share with you a handful of truths so you don't have to suffer with this disease like a runaway freight train. So let's get started. The first fact, type 2 diabetes is fully reversible and preventable. So if you currently suffer from type 2 diabetes or have been recently diagnosed, something you may have been told is that once you have diabetes, you will always have it. Another common belief is that you've been told that diabetes is always a chronic and progressive disease. In fact, you'll see these statements on the American Diabetes Association page. So this is the current thinking, this is the current approach to diabetes. But I would guess that many of you, if not all of you who end up watching this video, know somebody, maybe a family member, a friend, an acquaintance that maybe you haven't seen them for a while, and the next time you see them, they've lost a good amount of weight, maybe it was 20, 30 pounds or more, maybe 100 pounds, and you're like, wow, you look amazing. What happened? They're like, well, yeah, fixed my diet, started exercising, doing a lot of right things, lost a ton of weight and got off all my diabetes medication. You would be happy for them. You would say, great job. It would not be a surprise, would it? I mean, it happens all the time. Yet we're told that once you have it, you'll always have diabetes, and it's a chronic and progressive disease. So that's a myth. That's a lie. We've actually known the cure for diabetes for over 100 years. So this book here, The Treatment of, used to be called Diabetes Mellitus, it's written in 1916 by a medical doctor named Elliot Joslin. And this is a handful of years before insulin was even discovered. And this book is actually still available. It's been in many reprints over the years. You can still find this book on Amazon and other places. And the solution, which will sound obvious, they laid out, a nutrition plan. Cut out the sugars, cut out the, simple carbohydrates, whole foods, healthy foods, lots of good healthy fats, and they also incorporated different fasting protocols. Now, back in that day, most people with diabetes suffered with type 1 diabetes. You'll see later on in the presentation when type 2 sort of took over and is now in epidemic levels. But and people were very successful back then on treating diabetes this way. So who am I? Why should you listen to me? Who's this chiropractor talking about diabetes? Well, in the picture there is myself and my wife, Dr. Colleen, and our two kids. And we've had a family wellness practice for going on over 24 years now. We take care of a lot of families, a lot of children, and we've had a main focus on functional nutrition and cellular healing for about a dozen years now. And that's a big part of our practice because a lot of chronic illnesses and disease processes that people are challenged with and suffer with stem from poor nutrition, poor lifestyle habits. So that's been sort of an advanced certification education we've been on for many years. And we've literally attended hundreds and hundreds of hours in functional medicine, continuing education. Every year we're attending conferences and lectures and webinars and books and research, uh, really to just hone in on the true cause of why people are not as healthy as they could be or should be. Do I know everything? No. But we have taken a keen interest in really maximizing people's nutrition efforts to help their bodies heal. And this directly applies to type 2 diabetes. So the next fact, type 2 diabetes is caused by too much sugar and too much insulin. It's that simple. This is a disease of too much sugar and too much insulin. So, we can have a little laugh, but this is really a serious issue. But this cartoon kind of sums it up. The high carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. Not so funny, really, but that's really kind of how it all started. Kind of interesting with that comic. So if we look back at the dietary guidelines for Americans that came out in 1980, this is when fat became the villain. So this is the guidelines that demonized fat and recommended everyone eat a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet. Especially saturated fat was, a big no-no. Stop eating the red meats. And, of course, they accused fat consumption as leading to coronary heart disease, and you're going to have a stroke, and you're going to, clog your arteries, and all those types of things. Again, completely proven to be false, and has really led to the skyrocketing in diabetes as well as other chronic illnesses. So these guidelines spawned the infamous food pyramid, suggesting multiple servings of breads, pastas, cereal, and potatoes and other starches every single day. These are the precise foods that provoke the greatest rise in blood glucose and insulin. Again, this is what diabetes is too much sugar and too much insulin. So we all remember this, in school. This actually came out in 1992, so a few years after the guidelines, this was created, and you can see the entire base of the food pyramid. This is the original food pyramid. The whole base is refined carbohydrates. And listed is for you to consume 6 to 11 servings a day. And then, as you go up, fat is kind of isolated at the top with, extra sweets and things like that to be used sparingly. So this is where it all started to shift in the 80s with the recommendation of cutting out fat and adding all the carbohydrates. And we can see what happened with diabetes. So at the bottom you see the years they started. So if it's a little difficult to see, on the left it starts 1980, all the way to the right is 2015. The numbers on the left indicate the number of diagnosed people with diabetes. It's in the thousands. So you can see 1992, about a couple inches in on the left, is when that food pyramid came out. And then look what happened to the rates of diabetes. Just skyrocketed to upwards of, just under 25 million on this chart. The current statistics that you can pull straight from the CDC, we've now topped 30 million people in the United States. There's another suspected 30-40 million who have prediabetes. So this is a serious health epidemic. The next fact, type 2 diabetes affects every organ in the human body. So most cells in the human body can use sugar for fuel. So if we have a buildup of too much sugar in the body, this is where you can have toxic effects impacting every organ in the body. And so this is where diabetes becomes so serious and so deadly and just all around just a terrible disease, because just having diabetes, you basically leapfrog to the front of the line for your risk or the possible development of other chronic illnesses. So just having diabetes is the number one cause of blindness, of kidney failure, of heart disease. Heart disease itself is considered the number one cause of death in the United States. Heart disease and cancer kind of flip-flop. Also stroke. Stroke usually is number 3. So having diabetes just automatically ramps up your chance of falling to one of these diseases. Amputations, dementia. Interestingly enough, dementia and Alzheimer's is a form of that, or nicknamed type 3 diabetes. That ends up being a sugar toxicity and insulin toxicity issue in the brain. It's also the number one cause of infertility and of nerve damage or neuropathy. So pretty bad stuff. Not that anybody chooses this, maybe their lifestyle choices lead to this, but you really do not want diabetes. Fortunately, you can do something about it. It does not have to be a lifelong prison. It does not have to be a lifelong condition. The cost of diabetes is also something that's very concerning. I took this quote straight from the American Diabetes Association. They do an economic cost of diabetes in the U.S. Every few years, and this is from a 2017 report. They say people with diagnosed diabetes incur average medical expenditures of $16,750 per year, every year after year, and each year those costs go up. They don't stay the same. Very expensive disease to have. So out of the $16,750 per year, $9,600 is directly attributed to just having diabetes, the disease itself. Now, I understand that, depending on the insurance you have, a lot of this cost, might be covered by your insurance, but guaranteed you are paying for it through your premiums. You are most likely paying a premium for your premiums, and in a lot of cases, there is a tremendous amount of out-of-pocket expense. So in understanding things you can do to reverse this, imagine the amount of money that can be saved or put towards much more positive things in your life than just taking care of a debilitating disease. So there is good news here, but we need to really kind of be honest with what's going on now with diabetes. So they also say people with diagnosed diabetes on average have medical expenditures over 2 times higher than what the expenditures would be in the absence of diabetes. So just a very costly disease to have. Another fact, type 2 diabetes is reversible and preventable without medications. So unfortunately, if you're following the current medical model of treating diabetes, it's typically going to involve one medication, typically progresses to 2 medications, sometimes even 3. When that stops working, then typically insulin is recommended, so then you start doing insulin injections in addition to medications. So the first thing to know is drugs cannot cure a dietary disease. This is a disease of too much sugar, too much glucose, which ends up leading to too much insulin and ultimately insulin resistance. So the modern medical treatments, the meds and the insulin injections, specifically and only target reducing blood sugar levels. And they do that in a couple different ways. One class of meds targets increasing your insulin levels so that will drive your blood sugar levels down. So again, we still have elevated insulin levels. Another class of drugs like metformin reduce your blood sugar levels by reducing what's called gluconeogenesis within the liver. So you're just producing less sugar from the food you've eaten, but it's not addressing ultimately the insulin levels and the insulin resistance. So in many cases like this, we're really kind of targeting the wrong problem. It's all focused on getting your blood sugar number into a lower range or a normal range, thinking, okay, now we're successful with treating the diabetes, while you get worse and worse and worse. So diabetes is ultimately a disease of insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So if you look at the picture on the bottom right, on the left is a normal depiction of, okay, there's glucose in the blood. We have insulin that helps drive the glucose into the cell so the cell can use it to make ATP, use it for fuel, for life energy. The next two, the current model of looking at diabetes and treating diabetes is driving glucose into the cells by increasing the insulin. And the thought is only addressing the blood glucose levels, because the way they look at it is if you have so much sugar in the bloodstream and you've developed insulin resistance, the cells are not getting sugar in them, so you get internal starvation of the cells. Well, that's true of type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetics don't produce insulin, or they don't produce enough of it. So in that case, their cells can start to starve because they're not getting glucose into the cell. And that's why type 1 diabetics typically lose weight. They lose muscle mass, they get skinnier, and that was why so many died early on before we discovered insulin. But what's actually happening in type 2 is that the extra insulin, the extra production of insulin, continues to drive sugar into the cell. So it's more of an overflow issue where the cells are just crammed, jam-packed with as much glucose as can be stuffed in them, and then it continues to try to stuff even more sugar into the cells. So this is where we get into toxicity issues and how diabetes affects every organ in the body, is you're just so full of sugar. And that's how insulin resistance becomes an ongoing battle, that the body's constantly trying to get the sugar out of the blood and into the cells. So it's just going to force it as much as it can until eventually it can't do it anymore. And now you're going to start stuffing it into fat cells, and your organs are going to start becoming fatty, like fatty liver disease, and the pancreas can start to get fatty. And that's when you really start to go downhill and have really serious complications from diabetes. So this is a dietary disease that the drugs, especially the current drugs and treatment approach, are not going to solve this problem. You've got to get the sugar down, and the insulin will follow, and that's when your body resumes health. So I love this as a perfect analogy. These are actually hired subway pushers in the subway trains in Japan, and this has been going on for decades and decades. They're called subway pushers, and this is like all the people standing on the loading dock there are sugar molecules, and the subway pusher guys there is insulin. And these guys literally were putting all of their body weight into shoving these bodies into that subway to cram as many people in there before they can shut the doors. And they do this with every train ride just because it's overpopulated. And this is a good depiction of what type 2 diabetes is like in your body at the cellular level. Too much sugar, insulin's forcing it in. It's an overflow issue of glucose and insulin. So what do we do about this? There are solutions. There are amazing results that can be achieved. So I want you to imagine your life without diabetes. Just take a minute and think how it has impacted your life. It's impacted your ability to do things, to be active, your energy levels, your sleep, your relationships. Think about, just imagine your life without diabetes. Imagine your life without having to take diabetic medications. Imagine your life without having to subject yourself to insulin injections. I think one of the biggest, number one complaints when people do ultimately end up on insulin is virtually guaranteed you're going to gain weight. And it's kind of ironic how doctors will talk about, okay, it'd be helpful if you lost some weight, to help your diabetes. Yet one of the main treatment options virtually guarantees you're going to gain weight. We have several hormones in the body that assist with fat metabolism and helping our bodies, lose fat and burn fat. We have only one hormone in the human body that stores fat, and that is insulin. So the more insulin you have, the more you're going to gain weight and the more likely you're going to become obese. So again, it's about too much sugar and too much insulin. So I want you to imagine reversing your diabetes. Imagine not having diabetes anymore. That's not a fantasy. That's a reality. And for many, many people, every year, they achieve this. Imagine your life with your health restored. Now, with the right system, the right strategy, the right health coach, you can do this. Absolutely, you can do this. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, in wrapping this video up, I wanted to point out some of the truths and expose some of the myths and falsehoods about diabetes, and there are solutions. So the next step for you, really just want you to raise your hand. I just want you to say, you know what, yeah, I want to know more. I'm tired of this. I'm not getting better. I want to know what other options are. Fill out the form on this page. Submit your info. There's no obligation. That's all you're doing is raising your hand saying, hey, tell me more. I want to know more about this. I want to get my life back. I want to get my health back. So someone from our office will contact you, and we're typically going to talk about or offer you a couple options. The first one is to just RSVP for one of our upcoming free seminars. So we just touched on some things today. The seminar is going to go much deeper into this and solutions, and they're free to attend. So that's one option. The other is if you've seen enough doctors and nothing's working and you want a new outlook, you want a new perspective. Some people may not want to wait for a seminar. Just you have the option also of scheduling a consultation and a metabolic assessment where we'll do a thorough review of your health and really uncover what's going on with you, and if we can help you, we'll let you know. If not, we'll let you know that as well. So the next step, again, just fill out the form, submit your info. Someone from our office will contact you, and then from there we can take the next step. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch this video, and I look forward to meeting you. And this is Dr. Mark, and I'll see you next time.